Welcome to the Sex Science Podcast, where we turn the latest peer-reviewed research on intimacy and sexuality into fun, accessible conversations. Generated by AI and fact-checked by experts, the Sex Science Podcast was created by LaShaw to empower you through knowledge. So, join us as we explore pleasure, relationships, human connection, and everything in between.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. This time we're tackling a topic that a lot of you have been asking about. What kinds of interventions are out there to help couples who want to improve their sexual intimacy?
That's right. And for this deep dive, we'll be taking a look at a really interesting systematic review and meta-analysis.
That's from the Family Journal, right?
Yes, the Family Journal, Counseling and Therapy for Couples and Families.
Okay, awesome. Now, looking at this study, one thing that jumps out right away is that most of the research is pretty recent. So, there's been kind of a surge of interest in this area over the past couple of decades.
Absolutely.
As we're, paying more attention to relationships and well-being, sexual intimacy is obviously a big part of that. They looked at three main types of interventions: education and communication skill training, cognitive behavioral therapy, and emotional therapy. Can you maybe just give us a quick rundown of what each of those entails?
Sure, yeah. So with education and communication skills training, that's pretty much what it sounds like. Couples learn how to talk about their needs and desires.
Okay.
Openly and effectively with each other.
Basic communication 101, but applied specifically to the bedroom.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. What about CBT?
Yeah, so CBT, that's one that people have probably heard of, right?
Yeah, it seems to be a really popular approach for a lot of different things these days.
So basically it focuses on recognizing and then changing negative thought patterns and behaviors. So in the context of intimacy, this can help couples to address any anxieties that they might have, to improve their communication, and to just kind of work through any challenges that they're facing.
Together.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. And then emotional therapy, that one, I'm guessing that digs a little deeper, right?
So emotional therapy can help couples explore any sort of underlying emotional issues that might be impacting their intimacy, things like unresolved conflicts or past hurts.
So it's more about getting to the root of maybe some deeper stuff that would be playing a role. A lot of the interventions that they looked at in this study were focused on women, even though the goal is obviously to improve intimacy for the couple.
The really interesting thing is the study found that all of these interventions, regardless of whether they involved both partners or just the woman, had a large positive effect on marital sexual intimacy.
So even if only one person is actively working on things, it can still benefit the whole relationship dynamic.
Yeah, that's what the data suggests. It seems like when one partner learns new skills, new strategies, it can actually shift the whole dynamic for the better.
There's a real power in taking that first step, even if maybe your partner isn't quite there yet, ready to jump in.
Absolutely. It's definitely encouraging.
Okay, so I'm curious about how these different approaches actually stacked up against each other. Did they find any clear winners in terms of what was the most effective?
So one interesting finding was that CBT was particularly effective when both partners participated.
If you're both working on those thought patterns and those communication skills together,
right,
it seems like it would have a more powerful impact.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Now, what about for couples who maybe aren't in distress or anything, but kind of want to enhance their intimacy? Were there any interventions that were particularly good for that?
For those couples, the interventions that focused on education and communication skills were actually found to be really effective, giving them those tools to communicate better.
So even if things are going relatively well, there's still room to grow and improve.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that kind of open communication really is the foundation for a healthy and satisfying intimate life.
Now, another thing I thought was interesting was the length of these interventions varied quite a bit, right? Some were short and intensive, others went on for months. So I'm curious, did the study say anything about whether duration matters?
Yes, and this is where it gets really interesting. Interventions that were less than 10 hours actually were more effective for couples.
Okay.
But interventions that were from 10 to 20 hours were more effective for women who were going through it alone.
Wow. So shorter is better when you're working as a team, but solo participants might need a bit more time.
That's what the data suggests, yeah. And it might be because couples working together, they can kind of learn and implement changes more quickly.
Because you have that built-in support system.
Exactly, and that accountability. Whereas someone who's, working on their own, they might need more time to kind of process things and really apply to strategies.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, for couples who are maybe dealing with more serious distress or conflict, did this study recommend any particular approaches?
Yeah, for couples in distress, emotional therapy actually had the most significant impact on improving marital sexual intimacy.
So when things are really rocky, It's important to address those deeper emotional issues as well.
Yeah, working through those underlying hurts and just building a stronger emotional connection can create a much more solid foundation for intimacy to thrive.
Yeah, I'm hearing a real theme here, like communication and emotional connection. Those seem so crucial for intimacy, regardless of what other challenges a couple might be facing.
Absolutely. You're right. Those are like the fundamental building block.
This has been incredibly eye-opening. Before we wrap up, there's one more finding that I kind of wanted to touch on. It seemed like there was a difference in the types of interventions that were used for couples who were distressed versus those who weren't.
Right. For couples experiencing distress, emotional therapy really emerged as the most effective approach.
Okay.
It had the largest effect size in terms of improving marital sexual intimacy. And then for couples who weren't distressed but just wanted to enhance their intimacy, those interventions that were based on education and communication skills were found to be very effective.
Addressing those underlying emotional wounds is crucial for rebuilding trust and connection when things are tough. And focusing on open communication can take a good relationship to an even better place.
It highlighted the need to really tailor the approach to the couple, considering both practical needs and the emotional needs.
Yeah, I love that. There's no one-size-fits-all solution when it comes to intimacy. Well, this deep dive has given me so much to think about. What about you?
It really has. And I think for anyone listening who might be struggling with this stuff, it's really encouraging to know that there are effective options out there.
Absolutely. It's not a sign of failure to seek help. It's a really powerful step towards growth and connection.
Yeah, it's like taking your relationship to the gym.
I think the biggest takeaway is just that there's hope for couples who are struggling with intimacy. There are effective interventions out there, and no one has to suffer in silence.
Yeah, and you don't have to wait until things are at a breaking point.
In fact, the earlier you address these issues, the better. So true. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of marital sexual intimacy interventions.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time, remember that open communication and a willingness to grow together can make all the difference.
Thank you for listening to the Sex Science Podcast brought to you by LaShaw. We hope that you learned something new about the wonderful world of human intimacy and sexuality, and join us next time as we dive into more fascinating research. And remember, science is for you. Music for this podcast was produced by SOUNDRAW.